thank you all for joining. Today we are joined again by Georgina Armstrong, and she and Matt are going to be leading our discussion today, looking at a deep dive into building recommender systems. A few weeks ago, Georgina gave a conversation on the hard lessons learned from recommender systems, and today we are getting a little bit more practical and hands-on. The session is being recorded. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand. And yeah, other than that, I'm going to hand over to Matt and Georgina. Thank you.
Thanks, Madison. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We might end up talking about jam in some of these discussions, or at least some of the challenges that we've landed up getting a jam in with build our recommender systems. But what I did, because it was this sort of the last sort of partner session that I'm doing with Ecosystem for the year, I really wanted to finish off on a really good note. The feedback from Georgina's session a few weeks ago was really, really good. I didn't use any fancy AI. I just used the fact that I've got great rapport with Georgina. She gives us a great message, and I don't have to talk as much as I normally do. I think the subject was brilliant. A lot of us, our clients, are looking at building recommender systems, having massive challenges with them, evaluating technologies like Ecosystem and other technologies. The challenges we're going to talk about today, sometimes the technology conflicts, and we're going to delve a little bit deeper than Georgina went last time. I have no doubt she'll resurface some of those war stories as well. Before I introduce Georgina, Georgina doesn't work for Exidian. She doesn't work for Ecosystem, and she is just a really good friend to us and joins us out of the kindness of her heart, and because she's really passionate about the subject and is able to share her thoughts. A huge thank you to you, Georgina. I'm really excited about going through this discussion with you and learning a little bit more about some of the challenges we run into. And these are challenges like KPIs and internal politics and things that, as a sales guy, I think I've done a phenomenal job in selling a recommender solution, and all the shit hits the fan. Agendas start popping up. And these are things that aren't easily controlled and can have huge impact on a well-intended project. Georgina, you I'm sure have run into a lot of these sort of problems. What are your thoughts in general around how a great idea around a recommender can just really, really become really difficult to implement because of these challenges?
Yeah, I've got two real top of mind cases that did happen to us. You can build a mathematically perfect and even beautifully architected and engineered recommender system that can still fail, which is a horrific thought, but it does. And I've seen it happen for two reasons in particular that speak to this kind of conflict of interest inside the business or lack of clarity. One of them was around a politically fractured landscape inside a very large corporation, and the other was a more recent experience with KPIs that were at war with each other. The fractured environment was, I think it's been long enough now that I can say it was Foschini Group. In TFG, that is a very large retailer with about 20 sub-brands under it. And they were trying to create a united experience between those brands. And so you have these very distinctive stores, from your jewelers to Foschini itself. Total Sports is part of their stable. So all of these stores within the stable, but they were trying to create an identity as TFG Group. And if you joined TFG Rewards, you would get rewarded with vouchers for your spend at any of those stores that you could cash in at any of those stores. Sure, we can do that. And I think across the group, there was a buy-in to data science as a whole, recommenders in specific. Absolutely, we want our shoppers to spend more with us so that they can get vouchers to spend more with us. Sounds lovely. But where it all started to come apart was where you would have cash positive customers shopping at Total Sports, and they'd spend a bunch of money there, and they get a voucher they choose to cash in at Stearns Jewelers. And the Stearns business unit is like, wait, hang on. Their cash balances didn't look so great. You can handle this on the accounting side with a bit of intercompany transfer, but you instantly reach this schism between business units about where the vouchers were being earned versus where they were being spent. There wasn't unity of purpose around that. And so the recommender gets an incredibly bad rep because it's causing internal conflict between these business units.
Tell me, Georgina, just a quick question to jump in. Was that already sort of productionized and customers were feeling the friction between the brands?
So their implementation was that as you checked out at store one, you'd get a really long receipt, and on the back of it, there'd be a voucher. We had a readability issue in South Africa when our shoppers are not well accustomed to getting really long receipts and reading the back of them, and anything that's written on the back of them being worth reading. So there was a huge amount of blindness to the coupons they were even getting. So in the minds of South Africans, there is no TFG group.
Yeah.
There's Foschini, there's Total Sports, there's Stearns Jewelers, there's 18 other stores.
Yeah.
And not really regarded as an umbrella. They have never branded themselves as an umbrella. They don't have TV or radio adverts that tell you that all of those stores have something in common. And they're targeted at slightly different groups as well. So lots of reasons that had nothing to do with architecture, pipelines, mathematics, execution, all of those things outside of that system were contributing to this being a bad project.
You actually touch on quite a few of the challenges that I've got in mind. We've spoken about intercompany politics, brand misalignment, and KPIs. There's a real mismatch of KPIs. I want to get into let's tackle KPIs, because I want to share a little story, and this is before I was involved and had Exidian. I was working with one of the large banks, and their big thing with the consultancy that I was working at is they wanted to become a lot more customer responsive. They wanted to give their customer what they wanted, and they wanted to listen to their customer. And this was even before some of the really great AI technology were involved. We sent a bunch of UX researchers out there and find out what their customers wanted. This particular bank spent a lot of money with us to take 3 really cool ideas and go through a prioritization exercise to find out which would be really lucrative for the bank, obviously, which of them, but most importantly, the number one sort of trade-off was which the customer wanted the most. And we had to work out which one the customer wanted the most, which was going to give the bank the best value, which is the least complex or most complex to deliver. The one that the customers wanted the least was the easiest to deliver, and the one they wanted the most was the most complex. When we estimated the delivery of the highest demanded idea, it was just outside when they would be getting bonuses. So KPIs dictated that we built the idea that was least wanted. And I can imagine that sort of thing happens a lot with the sort of thing when you're building out a recommender system and it's not quite aligning to a business's KPIs and the way they're going to be benefiting from it. What are your thoughts and your experience with that?
For sure. I've had KPIs that were at war with each other that were inside the app itself. More recently, we had a recommender that we were releasing in a very large content app that I work for. The dynamic of our business is that we have a large library of content that we want users to discover, enjoy, and download. So download was our North Star. If somebody finds something they do want and they download it, we have done a good job as an app, which is a great product definition. We also make money by people seeing ad impressions, right? And so that's one of the key ways that we monetize, aside from subscriptions. So we built a recommender that did a damn good job of getting people to download content. And one of the problems that then emerged was they were seeing fewer ads. So we had reorganized the content feed very well. And they found what they wanted quickly, grabbed it and left. And that was fewer ad impressions. So we watched our North Star rate leap upwards, and we watched our ARPU come down. And inside the business, the North Star rate is the North Star for the entire business. The whole business calls it the North Star. But it's not the North Star if we start losing money. You know, we make less money than before. So that KPI conflict interacts with even the best built recommender system. If it starts hitting the wrong KPI too hard or the right one not hard enough, it was very, very tricky for us.
Cool. Anything you want to do? There we go.
I looked at this when we helped on Facebook and also the open social standard for Google. You could use external recommendations from sub brands just like you would an actual commission for a referral of a customer. And you just pay it out because it doesn't matter for most web brands who it comes from. It matters how much the cost of acquisition is. So
Absolutely. You need to
So-
align the incentives and make everybody happy that the system worked. To do
because-
that through a
because,
commission
yeah,
structure.
if they had a viewpoint like this is our sub company, even they were all owned by a holding company, that was a medieval mindset. It doesn't matter. If this point comes, that's why I see right now, and I've seen it for the last 3 years. One thing Web 2 and the cloud world taught us was with different logins, like Google login and others, a lot of the best customer for a long period on Google, YouTube was TikTok. And Facebook was referring for some of these sub brands and ads networks. So it doesn't really matter. The thing that would be interesting, and I was just thinking about this, is that recommendations sometimes matter about what is the outcome. I was just thinking about our example earlier about jams and jellies. Jellies are what we think of like that. Jams are more preserves. So it's in the usage form they put on other things. So what is your goal and what are you trying to find out in the recommendation? What's the thesis or the element you need to know what it comes from? And is there a driving? Are you trying to drive a certain action or are you just trying to find out where this action comes from? Sometimes recommendation systems is mainly about data. You want to know, okay, if you do this, what will people recommend and what will cause them to recommend it? And what type of customer will recommend or what type of partner or a source of recommendation? It really is important to figure out and well-craft the experiment that explains that. That's the key. What are some of the technical tools people use to craft these?
Yeah, Georgina, I think that's spot on. And it's something that I was going to touch on a bit later because a lot of our customers, they build recommenders to make more sales. It's like, oh, we've got the sales cannon now. And we're busy going through that with one of our banking clients at the moment. And they're just really viewing the implementation of the recommender system as this massive sales cannon. And I'm like, there's a much broader hyper-personalization value you're going to get out of this way beyond an extra few bank accounts sold. We'll jump into that in a second. I want to talk a little bit about politics because most big organized, all companies have politics. Most big companies have serious politics. And we talk about acronyms like HIPPO as in the highest paid person's opinion. Another example, banking clients put a great effort into building out their recommendation engine. They use ecosystems engine and their dynamic recommender. And what they did, similarly to what Discovery do if you open the app, it says, these are the next 3 best products that you should be buying from us. And they are they're personally identified for Georgina or for Matt or for whoever. But the problem is the executives of the different product houses were like, oh, hold on, but my product's not being shown enough. And now if you log onto the app, there's 20 recommended next best products for most customers. What's your experience been in that sort of space where these are the guys that are going to sign off the checks? So you've got to make them happy, but at the same time, the data is not showing that their product should be the one that should be bought.
Many times. So relative to Kareem's suggestion that you need to align business incentives and things like commission payments for cross recommendations is usually something above the pay grade of the data manager, the person in charge of building a recommender, but it has a direct impact on the success of that recommender. And there is no recommender you can deploy at scale that isn't being deployed inside of an organization, and every organization does have politics of vested interests and subdivisions. So TFG was one of the examples where it was the most stark. I do find politically, as someone who's usually a head of data, the technical sponsor and operational person who needs to make sure that the thing gets delivered, I try to find out who God is. Who's the person whose opinion matters the most about whether this recommender was a success or not? And then what do they really think this recommender is going to deliver for them? It can be an interesting answer as to who that person is. Who's the person you'd be most screwed if they felt it was a failure? Try find one person if you possibly can, narrow it down. But in terms of that person, then find out, are they thinking of this as a data play? I don't care what it does. So long as it works, the users interact with it, and we learn a lot about our users. Fantastic. Find out if they think it's going to be sales. We're going to get so much more volume out the door. Sweet. Working with retailers, I've known that they sometimes want it to be a discovery engine because they're great at getting people to buy bread and milk. They need them to come and buy chocolate-coated macadamia nuts or the new wine range that they're launching. Then that becomes a vested interest. Is the recommender system here to drive your new in-house products or your high-margin products? Or is it supposed to drive pantry stuffing, which is how you make sure that someone bulk buys 3 large pots of coffee, a non-perishable, and then their pantry is stuffed, which means they don't go to your competitor. That's very common in high-scale groceries retail. So what are the strategic hopes of the most important person, most important opinion person? What are their strategic hopes for this recommender? And then that usually gives you a pretty clear path to what success can look like. But you'll disappoint some people along the way. And it becomes an oddly political game for something that should be a statistical product wrapped in some very good engineering.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you started touching on the next big challenge. And I love this from your talk around brand misalignments. The whole story around Woolworths recommending tin tomatoes to their customers. And they are not tin tomato kind of people, although they buy them. And the data says, hey, we put them in our poly every time we're there. Let's jump into a little bit of the brand misalignment scenario. I'm sure the Woolly story is not the only one. And happy, I think you should share it for those that didn't get to join your last talk, because it's fascinating.
So yeah, if you have a prestige grocer and you build a recommender for them for vouchering, what is a prestige grocery brand? You're going to be dealing with wealthy people with fancy tastes, but they also buy their basics there. Otherwise, they can't buy everything they need. So they do buy a lot of choice grade tin tomatoes. So I'm looking at a recommender being built that reliably recommends a voucher of 10 Rand off some tin tomatoes. And then the customers are not delighted, not grateful, and in fact, annoyed and ignoring the voucher system. And I think it comes down to a self-concept. Like, what is it supposed to feel like being a loyal and regular customer of this prestige brand? When that brand reaches out to you, they use your first name, they send you a glossy email, and then they offer you a product for cheaper, which is not how you like to feel about yourself when you're shopping with this brand. You want to feel ethical, adventurous in the culinary sense, or just rich. It was statistically true that they would buy those tin tomatoes, but they felt dirty when you suggested it. It's worth having a conversation with folks in marketing or custodians of what the brand is supposed to feel like, to walk through some of your most common recommendations. How do you feel about telling people with gold cards and frequent overseas travel that will give them 10 Rand, which I think at the moment is $2? No, less, 1. Anyway, that giving them that much money off, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good, doesn't feel luxurious, doesn't feel flattering. Once someone who's a brand custodian can talk in brand language, in marketing language, and you listen to that, it actually suggests several things about how you should write your code in terms of what your targets, KPIs, filters, business rules should be. Yeah. And listening to that brand person can really inform the code you write and the ultimate recommender you end up with.
And these are softer metrics, right? So it's quite hard to build a brand identity into these things. How do you get the recommender and the machine learning to understand the brand? As people, we understand emotion, and there's a lot of emotion attached to a brand. And there's a reason why we choose very specific brands, because they have an emotional attachment to them. I won't buy any Under Armour golf gear in my life again because of the experience I had with them. And surely there would be an emotional attachment to brands, especially you spoke about recommendations being quite personal. Now we're talking about emotion, brand, and personal recommendations.
It always comes down to some pretty basic brass tacks, though, which is in your item catalog, it should ideally be labeled in terms of premium goods. And that's also quite easy to find. If you don't have it, there are ways to get your stuff labeled in terms of whether it's premium, whether it is sort of culinary specialized, whether it's particularly ethical. Your organic label will tell you that as well. You can harvest that on your item catalog in terms of things that are premium and fancy. So if the brand manager tells you that these are premium, fancy people who like to feel rich or ethical, you can find that in your item catalog. You can also segment your users that way from their browsing behavior. So very, very quickly, a soft conversation about feelings does boil down to some quantifiable stuff, some modelable stuff, which doesn't seem like a challenge to me to translate. From some soft feelings and relationship stuff into modifications that you make on a code level.
Abdul, you going to chime in? I did see you asking what the best recommender system is on an ecosystem AI webinar. Do you know the answer is going to be ecosystem AI? We'll tell you why later, though.
That's the
But you
question I was asking because I wanted to know tooling and what are the things that, nobody wants to reinvent the wheel, especially around recommendation systems, which are very, very optimized, a lot of experience. What are the things, features it offers, and what are some of the tooling and things it compares to? Because then people can look at, like she was talking about, how you get to brass tacks, personas, what are the drivers? Are some people using big fives? Are they using things that are more Myers-Briggs based or Jungian on segmenting? That's the tooling and specifically the features that are extremely valuable and important for people who want to figure out how to do this well. And that's something I'd love to hear with your tooling, how you approach that.
I didn't need to invent recommenders from scratch. I was very happy to use well-established techniques. The easier you can make it for yourself to get some of the well-established recommendation techniques up and running, the better, because your time is better spent elsewhere, like mulling over these business rules and fine-tuning some of your user segmentation. I've never considered Jungian segmentation. I don't really go for personality. I tend to bake in a bunch of attributes that I infer from interactions with the item catalog, like organic or vegan, expensive things, things that are bad for your health, good for your health. And there are ways to enrich your item catalog with that kind of data. Of course, most of my examples are groceries, so you can probably hear that in my
If your
explanation.
dating site or something like that's more.
Oh, that's a rich data set, though.
Or automobiles, people buy cars for very Jungian things like that. We just saw a presentation by the guys that are doing semantic search and semantic recommendations. They have the data set from BMW and Mercedes. And it was all emotion. Who do you view yourself as? How does Gen AI, the tool you guys use, can you talk about how it deals with some of these segmentation and some of the features and the approaches, if you don't mind? I actually do want to know about the product.
I would like to jump into that with you separately. I'll do it if you'd like. And just really on the back of what Georgina said, I think you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You don't want to, a lot of companies will go out and build everything from scratch. And, we were at an ecosystem dinner the other night and Jay was talking and he said, no, you can do that, but why would you, and to talk specifically about ecosystem where they've sort of really hit the nail on the head is through the dynamic recommender. You've got real time. So you're not only just looking at historical data and that sort of thing, you're looking at data in motion. You are seeing intention through the way that somebody's interacting with your digital assets. You've also got a lot of behavioral science and algorithms built into it. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. The ecosystem guys have even thought of algorithms around understanding dormancy, products that you're about to make end of life. The only reason you're going to do it is because it's not selling, but there might be a ton of other reasons why it's not selling and you haven't been able to test it because it's a lot of human effort to find out why a product is become dormant, and then the machine learning capability. So those are three factors all layered on top of each other make the platform really great. We talk about it as a vertical platform. It's very customer focused, very focused on behavior in the moment and being able to use that data make a recommendation in the moment. So if I'm on my banking app and clicking through very intentionally, it's probably not the right time to prompt me to take up a credit card because I need to go pay my staff and I'm running out of time, and please don't try and sell me anything. You wouldn't be able to see that without a dynamic recommender in place. But I can get into this for a long time with you, Abdul. So I'm going to ask if we can park it, and I'm going to ask you for a separate conversation if that's okay.
What I will say is some of our ecosystem is extremely helpful to me because the scale of recommenders that I've deployed, I cannot afford to outsource that to some service that I pay per recommendation. Well, at the scale I'm generally operating at, the cost per recommendation, it can't be expensive. It'll erase any marginal profits we were going to make. So having this kind of fast-tracked in-house tooling is ideal. And being able to inspect that code yourself and make changes and upgrades yourself is ideal. It seems to be the combination of being able to fast track the way external providers often tell you they can help with, but then also have the inspectability and control. And generally, I have to keep my information inside of our infrastructure because of how sensitive a lot of those segments are and a lot of GDPR compliance that I have to deal with.
That's Abdul, anything else?
was going in depth because one of the things that session, and I'm looking for it in the calendar session, I was going to send it to you, the message. It was talking about how to take semantic and other those tools and apply it to AI data, and really great breakdown of a lot of that. But what I'm interested in is what are the standards around recommendation systems and open source tools that people use? They point to their data warehouse, what their historical usage of data in their companies. What are some of the ones you guys have seen, if you don't mind me asking?
Georgina, you want to grab that one?
Yeah, sure. I have built things on EC2 and coded in Zeppelin and then integrated that into the back end. I was using PySpark MLlib, pretty straightforward open source machine learning library for collaborative filtering. I started that basic. The majority of my work, data cleaning and pipelining, actually getting the thing to run, and then business rules to make it a good recommender, as opposed to just a collaborative filtering recommender. And that's when you end up splitting into two towers, doing a bunch of Python code, well, Spark code on either side of it to make it run at scale. So that's one of the ones that I've seen. I have not seen anything running in R, that's for damn sure. I did a deep vendor evaluation at one point for a scale recommender system with something called, one of the off-the-shelf recommenders that Google offered, like a BigQuery, I think it was BQML. And so just ML built right on top of BigQuery in the GCP platform, which was where we were. And that had a cost per recommendation that was laughable for the business case that we needed to use it for. Something like 0.7 cents a recommendation, which was laughable when we needed 1,000 per user and we had about 20 million monthly active users and a lot of sessions. Very easy, plug and play, but absolutely ridiculous economically for us. We've been using some Vertex AI, also within the GCP stack. There's some lovely tools there in their model garden and fast tracking what you can get up and running.
Well, the problem was it cost for your recommendations? It cost.
With a very deep content catalog and earning micro pennies per user, it is not viable for us to put.
Oh, that was the model. I thought you'd say it was costing 0.07 and you were getting 1,000.
No, per each recommendation.
Okay,
cool.
And then,
so that was what we would pay, but we were making micro pennies in ad impressions.
I thought you said 1,000, like $1,000. I was like, wow. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so GCP is a good stack. They've got good tooling. Like I tell you, Facebook, TikTok, all these other areas. There are even people who have, we found, and this is just something to tell you to open up to where you look. There are ads, there are apps now that have all these viewers who are, some of them are even ones that are like illegal video ads, but I wouldn't suggest you use that. But there are ads that are super high volume. A lot of people are using right now, AI ads and other ads like confidential story. You write part of the story about yourself, and they're AI driven game ads where there's super high quality conversion and super high quality customer base. So think outside the box for your sourcing. A lot of the financial ads like Square, Cash, PayPal, and others are giving away $200 to $300 to get user adoption on these sites. When I saw Cash App, Square, and PayPal on a hacked video site doing conversion, I was like, wow.
Yeah, they were monetizing pretty differently to us. We were getting micro pennies from half and half tier 1 and tier 3 countries per visit. And the recommender would have cost more than we were making per visit, which was bananas. So that kind of off-the-shelf, fully outsourced things wasn't going to fly for us, which is where it makes more sense to have competent data scientists assisted and sped up with a tool like Ecosystem AI, so that they can get the model up and testable and start on that journey of like business rules, better customer segmentation, discovering the KPI problems, finding all of that out sooner by spending less time on the data science. Getting it up and running is valuable to us for sure.
I want to jump into the next challenge, and actually, Abdul, you touched on it a little bit as well, and Georgina, we spoke about it earlier. I'm a hardened sales guy, and I'm happy that customers want to sell more and use recommenders to do that. But I think we're kind of almost missing the point a little bit, because the recommender can be used for so much more than just using a sales target or a cross-sell or upsell target, or even just a retention target. It loses the value that you can get out of a recommender system, and because you can use it to learn so much. As a salesperson, my process is to understand a customer's problems and challenges and build out a real understanding, and then go even most customers will tell you the symptoms of their problems and not the actual problem. You spend a bit more time in the organization and find out the real problems, and that's when you can actually solve for them. Now, recommenders won't really be able to do that. So, going just after the sale and not getting the value out of it makes the recommender look like it's failed, but it might not have, because it might have collected a whole ton of data and understanding around this customer segment that you didn't actually know about. What are your thoughts on that, Georgina?
I've seen recommenders, once they're up and running, get really interesting alternate use cases thrown at them, which has caused us to kind of rethink the recommender. So you can have a recommender that does a pretty good job of upsizing the basket, right? Adding a few more items to a basket, you make a little bit more money, and that is great. So you get that recommender up and running and everyone's delighted. And then a manager you've never spoken to before, from a division you've never really spoken to before, because it's logistics of fresh foods, comes up to you and goes, I heard about this recommender. I have a problem and I wonder if you can help me with it. We bought too much lettuce. Lettuce is the bane of fresh groceries because it does go off real quick. And also, when the weather shifts, nobody wants it. The temperature drops, the clouds roll in, and no one wants to eat a leaf of lettuce. But you've brought it from the farms to the DC, and it is sitting there. It is not moving off the shelves. And what you get introduced to is the bigger business. I'm happy with your recommender. It's great that it's boosted baskets. The basket boost has given us an extra 800,000 Rand in a given month, but I have a 3 million Rand lettuce problem that you might be able to help me with, actually, if you're willing to interfere with your recommender. And that's when you can start to see the recommender not so much as a sweet little engine that boosts basket size, but as something you can use to solve other problems. So yeah, you start punting lettuce. You push lettuce, you put your thumb on the scale, lettuce rises in the rankings, and you get a lot of lettuce into people's baskets before those clouds roll in and before it starts to rot on the shelves, and you solve 2 million of a 3 million problem that they were having. That's amazing. Your recommender might not look so great on its purely defined performance metrics because, yeah, the lettuce, you boosted it for other business reasons, but from a pure user demand reason, maybe you were overdoing it a little on the lettuce, something else should have gone above it or below it. Yeah, but as long as you can work that relationship with the head of logistics, you make sure that story makes its way to the head of operations, to the CEO, and everyone starts to see the potential of your recommender beyond just boosting basket size. Then you're cooking with gas, because then your recommender product jumps out of just the online team or the online orders team into, my God, we could use this to solve a few different things. Now, I say that with hesitation. There's very few things that you can build with data science that can do two things well at once. So remember that the data science of it was designed, in this example, to boost basket size. Greater than the data science, the product of being able to boost certain things to users at certain times has a certain value that you can only really exploit and share if you work the relationships with some of the managers who aren't the original commissioners of the algorithm. They need to talk to each other and be friendly about it. But it was one of the more interesting cases I've seen.
Cool. Abdul?
Oh, you muted yourself there.
And yeah.
I was thinking of lettuce combo deals because you could combine it with other things like tomatoes, celery, and have a price point where they give a discount if they add lettuce to salad elements they're already buying, or other things that could go with lettuce, like a sandwich meat or tuna. You recommend, there's lettuce as a discount if you add it to this basket. And that could be a way of getting the data system to tell you others who would be just didn't think about lettuce. They need it, they probably could use it, but they didn't think about it. And then you go ahead and just
suggestive bundling needs to be built into the product that your recommender is acting through. In this case, suggestive bundling was not, but that was definitely on the horizon because it's also a better way to navigate. You can create a hugely long feed in a recommender that someone can scroll for. Suggestive bundles are actually, we're showing a lot of potential in terms of getting people to shop more easily and basket more stuff because it was less exhausting than scrolling linearly for ages. So yeah, bundling is an option. Also on the table is full dynamic pricing. So understanding you had too much lettuce in the DC problem with weather on the horizon and starting to tweak your lettuce pricing. That is something that particular client I was working with does have the ability to do. And fortunately in South Africa, it's also legal for us to do that. But I do know that the other 2 to 3 major retailers don't have the ability to sell dynamically at a different price on an app for delivery compared to the price on the shelf in the store that they're picking from.
Where is it?
No, you're muted again there.
Sorry, where is it illegal to do dynamic pricing? I never heard of that. I never even thought about that.
Out of the United States, it can be at times a regulatory issue around dynamic pricing. Uber is the test case for it in most countries as to whether it's permissible to have surge pricing, but it also can be applied differently to different goods. So Uber might be able to get away with surge pricing in a certain territory, but you may find it's illegal to charge more for government brown bread.
Is it like American government cheese where they give it away or something? Like, what is brown bread?
No, government bread, regulated bread prices are something that happens in certain countries, and I know that we have it in ours. And so there is a regulated bread price because it is a survival good. So groceries is fascinating.
The other side of that, and what does happen, and this could be something for people who need to move time limited or discounted distressed product, is we have discounted pricing where if people want to move stuff, they have what they call loss leaders, that you can have a thing that they want to move it, they want to bring people in the store, they just give a ridiculous price for a certain thing that people buy that they know people are going to buy other stuff with it. Like they may have bread is actually at $2, which is a doorbuster for you to come in and buy, and like apple juice or one of the other staples. Hot dogs are like $1.50 a packet, which is ridiculously, I don't see how they can make money on it. But when you buy that, you're going to buy bread, you're going to buy ketchup, you're going to buy mustard, you're going to buy cheese, you're going to buy all these other things. And they actually end up making more money that way off the other.
Absolutely. None of that was priced in. That would enter my recommender system already priced in, but then making the recommender itself a tool for that is absolutely something that they're doing at the moment. Making things cheaper is usually not controversial, but making them expensive again or bringing the price back up from a super discount can be a regulatory issue, can also be a customer satisfaction issue. And a second thing is it's also a bit spicy if you start changing the prices of goods depending on user segmentation, because in our country, there's some very strong rules against algorithmic pricing based on user attributes because of racism.
I'm convinced that every time I check on a ticket price that I need to buy, the algorithm goes, yeah, he's looked at it again. It's more sure that he has to buy. We're going to push it up until eventually he goes
incognito mode for air ticket.
Oh, no, I can't have that because then I get the recommendations early enough that I found with like Speedy and others, because they have a history of when I want to fly certain times, they recommend me to buy them earlier. I'm looking at Google's new Air tool. I was just literally looking this morning at it to plan a trip later. And I was like, wow, I actually should buy early, and I never buy early. But I actually started to change my behavior because it's recommending that I start looking at things when I should, not when I usually do. So
that is analogous to pantry stuffing in groceries. Buy 2 giant packs of toilet paper. You don't need the second one right now, but buy it from us. If you don't buy it from us now, then in 1 month's time, will you buy it from us? There's a chance you'll buy it from a competitor. Buy it now, buy it early, buy it from us.
Madison, that's an excellent point you put about static recommenders. I'm looking at some things we're going to be building in the future. Not right now, but we need to solve recommenders. They're just crap overall. That's why I asked about your product. I'm a Silicon Valley guy. I helped build the Google Developer Group. So when you said GCP had some good machine learning tools, they're better than others, but they're still all crap, except for maybe yours. Because the way you talk about this shows you really understand recommenders. And we hate having to write them from the beginning, even if we get good stacks of 20, 30-year historical data to start with. It just really isn't the best. There really isn't an open source standard or any standards around this, are they?
No, but I would never. I cannot think of an example where I would use 20 years. One of the chapters of the talk.
For housing data. For housing
data.
Oh,
housing.
Yeah.
Zillow is then like
those data should be interacted with the Zillow fellows on that data. That's a data set because I helped restructure the data set about 2008 for the Fed. You won't believe this. They use the Energy Star data about power usage to revalue all the property they bought that was about to die. And we helped them figure out, and that's how President Biden got in. He supported that effort by being able to really tell how much the properties were worth. And it wasn't the housing. It was the $100 million strip malls these guys were getting financing for and living off the interest and never actually filling up and getting rent on that messed the economy up. Housing's only 20% of all the property in America. It could all fail and the country wouldn't die. Like, it would be bad, but it wouldn't be like, it was those $100 million strip malls that people like President Trump were getting financing for. So I'm just going to leave you that information to say about. That's why you use 20 years for large purchases, 1 to 2 to 3 times the lifetime purchases, but super profitable. The thing I'm asking is that there's no standards around recommenders and open source recommenders, so you can understand what the best practices are, because most people have data in their own silos and it's super important for their customers and they don't share it. But I know there's have to be some people who've open sourced some excellent tooling to let people understand what successful conversion rates and successful information structures are. Then you can actually assess how good it is.
Well, I've never found standards like KPI targets, like model performance standards. I have found that both the architecture of your solution and your results are so bespoke to the industry, the business, and the data quality you inherit that it is extremely difficult to measure how you were doing, except in a before and after, or if you're lucky, an A/B test with your profits. Like, that's what you look for. Did the results of this recommender earn us more money than what we spent building, architecting, and running it? That's why I'm pushed so much towards using existing algorithms, open source, and things that I don't have to rent from cloud providers, AI providers. I look at the economic output of the thing that I built. I've never found benchmarks that could ever be trusted in terms of sensitivity, specificity, net discounted gain. Absolutely not. Never found those. Even between almost different identical retailers, I cannot tell you that they would be able to compare their notes in terms of how well each of their recommenders are doing in the same country, in the same industry, with the same customers. I don't think they can.
I know we are running out of time. I just wanted to start wrapping up. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Georgina. You gave us a nice way of thinking about these things, but I think we're still in such an early stage with recommenders and how they're maturing and how they're developing. I mean, we were talking, this is not even a recommender, we were talking about travel earlier, and ChatGPT promoted something called Atlas. And it looks like a way for you to use them to book your trips. I didn't play with it. I didn't look at it. I'm going to do it later. But if you want to play around with your travel, go and look at the ChatGPT's Atlas. I don't know what it's going to bring you, but it'd be interesting if it does anything special.